All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this morning for our called session of the Board of Education for Granville County Public Schools. We have just two items on the agenda this morning, and so we will get started with those in just a few moments. Before we get started, let's take a roll call so that we can determine a quorum. If you're present, if you'll say here. Ms. Allward?
Here.
Mr. Rivers?
Here.
Dr. McKnight? Dr. McKnight did have a family funeral this morning, so that may be where he's at. Mr. Peace?
Here.
Mr. Udy? Dr. Houlihan?
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum, and if we'll check with our other, Dr. McLean?
Yes, here.
Dr. Myrick?
Here.
Ms. Day?
Here.
Dr. Winborn?
Here.
Attorney Dubison?
Yes.
All right, and I see that Dr. McKnight has joined us.
Here.
Before we want to get started, I want to just thank Ms. Loftus, who has been filling in as our board clerk in the past month, and just want to appreciate her for her work. And I assume that in our next couple meetings, Ms. Henderson will be joining us. So we'll go ahead and get started with our invocation. Mr. Rivers, would you offer our invocation this morning?
Yes, Mr. Richardson. May we bow our heads. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, please bless us today as we make important decisions for the children of Granville County and for the employees of our district. As we face so many challenges, please give us the wisdom that we need to do the absolute very best for our children and our students. Guide us in the conduct of this meeting and help us to reach the best conclusions. In Son's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Peace, would you lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Peace. All right, so again, two items that we'll discuss this morning. I want to go over real quickly kind of the format of what our meeting will look like. Our executive staff will be presenting some of the information that you requested related to reentry and their recommendations, and so we will have that. Then we will have a discussion surrounding kind of what Granville County Public Schools decision will be. You have the ability to take action this morning. You also have the ability to hold off and perhaps maybe give staff direction and then take formal action on the 13th. I do want to say that obviously the governor did not announce his decision yesterday as we previously thought, but we're going to move forward with still making our plans the best we can so that awaiting for that decision, we can allow our parents and our staff in our district to kind of make some plans along with us. So just keeping that in mind, that as we hear this new information from the staff, that we'll have that time, that we'll make some kind of comments and decisions and disclosure. And then after that, we do have a closed session that we will need to add right before the 2.03 discussion. So with that, I will turn it over to our superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good morning to our chair, board members, district staff, guests, and friends of Granville County Public Schools, and happy almost 4th of July weekend. This morning's presentation is designed to provide quality information around specifically Plan B's work necessary to satisfy the reopening of schools for our students in August. It was our hope that a statewide decision would have been provided on yesterday, and this morning's meeting would have been a more specific decision designed for our community. And although that did not occur in that particular order, quality data is still necessary for our community and our district in order for us to still be able to open school in an effective, quality manner for our families and educators. Hence, this morning's meeting, as our chair has described. Staff will take time to share answers to some questions that have been posed, share some ideas from experts engaged in matters of re-entry across the country, and offer suggestions from our local parents, educators, and staff. In yesterday's press conference, the governor expressed that he wanted to have school open in August for in-person instruction, but he wants to get it right, as do we. So we welcome your thoughts, your ideas, your questions, and suggestions this morning, because we do have a meeting scheduled for August 13th as well. But I don't recommend waiting much longer than that, because there is still much work to do. Districts were charged to develop 3 plans, and this morning we will have A and C for the most part, but need board direction, like most across the state, for Plan B. So we want everyone to please turn their attention to Plan B. Why? Because that is where the challenges rest, with social distancing, transportation, cleaning protocols, and costs. As superintendent, it is imperative that in all plans, we work to protect the safety and well-being of both students and staff this go around. We were in an emergency situation in March, but there are several areas where we want to get it right, and to take time to do so this time is important. It is important all understand things can, however, may and will probably change. So many of our plans need to be fluid, and we will need to work in partnership to make certain we execute well in the event we need to adjust. So our need to remain flexible is critical in not only how we open, but how all of us help children and parents navigate life and learning during these unprecedented times. So I would like to ask our lead re-entry individual, Ms. Lauren Curtis, to please move to the first slide this morning. For us this morning, we are talking about Plan B, but let me give just a few reminders before we jump right in. So Lauren, if you'll drive for us this morning. There we go. Next slide. Just a few reminders before today's work. Next slide. I need to make a clarification from this past Monday's meeting. I indicated that families might be able to change their minds and that decisions would go possibly through December. However, because Plan B requires a maximum occupancy of 50%, this may not be possible unless guidelines from the state changes. So I don't have the authority at this point to make that decision. Board members, I need to make that point of clarification because I don't want to put out misinformation or hope that I don't have the authority to give. So allow me to please offer that clarification at this time, that 50% occupancy is not from our office or a local decision, but that is a state guideline at this point, and we will need to have that occupancy changed from the state level in order to offer that type of change. Next slide. We also want to remind everyone that the governor shared and the DHHS, our DHHS department from the state shared that yesterday alone, was a very difficult day for our state. The results are continuing to go up in our state. Now, we don't know what that means in terms of the influence it will have on the final decision, statewide decision that will be made. But we wanted to remind everyone when we say the decision needs to be fluid and everyone will need to understand that there is a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. This is probably going to have some sort of influence on the capacity of districts to be able to move interchangeably in between plans. These are just some results from our community. We wanted to include these just as a reference point this morning in case you needed them. All right, next slide. I'd also like to remind our staff, I believe our board saw the press release that went out yesterday with guidance from the Department of Health and Human Services and our continued contact with the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. We've remained in touch with our principals and our athletic directors, and we have continued to try to stay in touch with developing plans and processes, procedures, and we, like many districts in our conference, many school districts with whom I speak with superintendents on a regular basis, have decided to delay our July 6th date to July 20th for beginning not practice. I want to be very clear, this is not practice, but skill development for athletics. The date is now July 20th. And that press release went out on yesterday. So just a reminder, again, things change. This is not relative to anything except athletics. So just an update, just a reminder here. Next slide, please. Now to today's work. Plan A calls for minimal social distancing in our schools. Very much so like school is normal, but minimal social distancing is where Plan A comes into effect. This is for face-to-face. If all things were to remain the same, youngsters would return to school as normal, and there would be just minimal social distancing, cleanliness, making certain students were safe, faculty were safe, but minimal things, protocols, procedures put in place to keep everyone safe. We feel we could do that, but not much would change. The question is that the wise thing or the smart thing to do? Seeing the data or the trend patterns at this point, we don't know what the governor will call for. Please be reminded, board members, that we do not have the authority to be less stringent. We can be more stringent than whatever the governor decides, but we cannot be less stringent than what the governor decides. Plan B, these are options we will be discussing and sharing with you for your consideration today. This is a moderate social distancing plan. We've heard and seen many plans all over the state and nation. We're going to bring two options to you today for your consideration. And then there is Plan C, which is what most are familiar with in North Carolina now, remote instruction. But even with remote instruction, there were some things we needed to do better, like all districts. We want to build in a social emotional plan. We want to build in supports for parents. We want to build in technology plans to make certain, when do we help get the computers rejuvenated and help make sure students who don't have access to technology have access this time if they need it. If not, then the remote plan is paper and pencil again in our community, because we're well aware not everyone has internet. But what can we do to try to get better internet service in our community and work with local and state officials to help us do so? Things of that nature. So all of these plans requires a little work. We're prepared and poised to do that. But today's work is around Plan B. How will Plan B look in Granville County Public Schools? Next slide, please. Dr. Winborn, will you assist me with operations and our health and safety information this week?
Absolutely. Good morning, board members. Thank you, Dr. McLean. These next two slides are a bit of a repeat, but I felt it was worth going over them again. I know that there had been some questions about this. Obviously, we are planning for both cleaning and disinfecting on a very frequent basis for any scenario under Plan B or Plan A. Cleaning, obviously, with soap and water just reduces the amount of germs and dirt and impurities on the surface. This is something that we always do, but it's very important as well to continue now. And then disinfecting is what actually will be most effective for killing the COVID-19 virus. Just would make a point that our maintenance team has been very deliberate about the purchase of disinfectant supplies that are very effective specifically at killing the COVID-19 virus. So we're going to be well equipped to take on these cleaning and disinfecting protocols. In addition, we're going to have hand sanitizer. We've already put in several large orders for this so that we can have these strategically located throughout the buildings and our entrances and office areas, and then make sure that there's an ample supply in every single classroom across the district. Mr. Rivers, I think, alluded to this last time. There's been some mixed research out there, and some says that COVID-19 can live on surfaces for maybe just a few hours, up to a couple of days. I think, what I've read, it shows that it depends on the type of surface and the surrounding conditions, the sunlight and the heat that exists in those areas. So I think we kind of need to plan for the worst case scenario, that if it is able to survive for days, then we need to make sure our protocols, take that into account. Plan for the worst on that. Next slide, please. So we're going to be following the guidelines that are outlined in the Lighting Our Way Forward document, and that was issued in partnership with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and NCDPI. And these are requirements, these 4 bullets here. As I mentioned before, we're going to have a daily and multi-day schedule for just doing all of the high-frequency touch areas in the building and our buses, so disinfecting those surfaces. It'll not just be our custodians, but every single adult in our buildings will play a part in cleaning and disinfecting on a regular, frequent basis. We're also going to have to be very mindful of storing these cleaning materials. Some of them have very high alcohol content and are considered flammable. So we have to be very careful about how these are stored and where these are stored securely. And we also have to allow for adequate ventilation right after cleaning. So that's something that we're going to be training our staff on, all staff. The maintenance team is going to be putting together some instructional videos to help, and we're going to make all that available, information available to our families, so they will be aware of the processes and the types of materials that we're going to be using to do our cleaning. We will have the safety data sheets, or the SDS sheets, available to the public for any disinfectant materials that we're going to be using. And then finally, we're going to be doing, as we talked about previously, this sort of quote-unquote deep cleaning or intensive disinfecting between cohorts as much as possible. And board members had requested that I conduct some additional, do some research on that and try and find some scientific evidence about this. The reading that I found was mixed, but we did go back and look at the qualitative data from our parent and teacher surveys. And there was an overwhelming desire for our families and our employees to know that we were taking extra precautions to make sure that our buildings were clean and disinfected. So based on that overwhelming feedback alone, I think this 4th bullet is going to be very critical. that between those groups of students, we can sort of compartmentalize, put a firewall, so to speak, between when one group is in the school and before the next one enters. So I think that's going to be critical. And of course, there's going to be probably some weekends we'll have to do some of that work as well. So that's pretty much cleaning protocols in a nutshell. Obviously, you know, we will be making all of our processes and protocols available in print with detailed information, so that the public, our employees, you know, our families can all have access to and understand exactly what we are doing when we return to school. So there's no questions, no ambiguity. We want everyone to feel like they are in safe, healthy, and clean buildings.
Dr. Wimborne, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Since Monday, I've spoken with a good friend of mine in Houston, Texas, who's a hospital administrator. He is in charge of a ward that is filled with COVID patients. Since March, when they got the PPE all figured out and the face mask and all that, they have not had a single staff member become infected. And they deal with a ward full of COVID patients 24 hours a day. They change their staffing every 8 hours, so it's like a new cohort coming in every 8 hours. He told me that absolutely contact cleaning is far more important than deep cleaning. And to the extent that we have to give up resources or money or something to reduce our contact cleaning for deep cleaning, that's a mistake as far as he's concerned, and their track record has proven it. They use a chemical which he was going to send me the data sheet for. I haven't gotten it yet. It may be one of the ones you all have. It kills, guarantees kills the COVID virus in less than a minute. So what they do is with wipes or whatever, they wipe all touch surfaces, light switches, doorknobs, whatever, on a frequent basis. And again, they have had with dealing with infected and very sick COVID-19 patients 24 hours a day, they have not had a single staff member become infected. So again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse on this, but if it means we have to educate our public, I really, from everything I have read, the contact cleaning is so much more important that I would hate for us to take away from contact cleaning to go for deep cleaning. So at any rate, if it means educating the public, then so be it. But I think there's plenty of data out there with these hospital wards have solved the problem that we should have confidence in what method we take.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. I certainly don't doubt that is the case. I would also point back to the fact that this fourth bullet, it is contained in the Lighting Our Way document as a requirement. So I think we're going to have to wait. Maybe that will change in the coming weeks, but we will need to find time to satisfy that fourth bullet in some way. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's not a full day. If that's what the board feels, maybe we try to do that at night between the cohorts or on weekends, that type of thing. We could certainly. I'm open to any types of suggestions. We'll get it done.
Right.
That's what I want to communicate.
Yeah, I think we have to go about it scientifically, and we do know that if we deep clean, say, once a week, what's going to happen in the intervening 7 days. The contact cleaning is clearly what we need to do, I believe. And it's just my opinion, and obviously, everybody else may have their own opinion. But certainly, this information from this hospital administrator, he was emphatic. He said, we have not had a single staff member get infected, and they are intimate, changing, bed linens and changing, IVs and this, that, and the other, and around these patients all the time without a single infection. So You know, the proof's in the pudding there, but at any rate, I think we'll be having this conversation more.
Yes, sir.
All right. Dr. Winblatt, thank you for that. We
Yes,
will have
ma'am.
to figure out how to satisfy the requirement of bullet 4, because that is a requirement. Thank you for that, Mr. Rivers. Sounds like a very fortunate hospital there. We appreciate that. All right. Ms. Curtis, will you take it on in for us, please? Technology and internet connectivity is a big topic for our board to consider. And we have a piece here we want our board members to pay particular attention to. Ms. Curtis?
I'm actually going to do this slide, Dr. McLean. So,
Oh, good. Hi there. Good morning, Ms. Lofton. Good morning.
Good morning. So, we are preparing as a district for all students to have a Chromebook for the 2020-2021 school year. As a result, we're asking that all students have to sign our technology responsible use. We call it the TRUE. It's an online agreement form. And we are asking that all students pay the $25 usage fee. This fee is what allows us to offset the cost of repairs and sustain the program. We do have hardship waivers that are available. People take advantage of those every year. We are informed about those by school counselors, administrators, teachers, if a student is not able to pay the $25 or maybe needs a payment plan. We've already been doing all of those things for all secondary students, but that would be a new requirement for elementary since they've never had take-home devices before. At this time, we're planning on doing device pickup the week of August 10th through 14th, and we will rely heavily on the schools to help us with that since it's all happening in 1 week. This will just be for students who are picking up a device for the first time. Otherwise, usually our students who are returning to the same school keep their device over the summer. Parents, guardians, and students will be provided with support videos and packets on Chromebook basics, and we also will make one-to-one sessions available upon request. We realize that some people just like to sit down next to somebody and shown how to sign in, how to access particular websites. So we're brainstorming how to do that safely and effectively, but we also understand that some people just need that face-to-face learning on how to use the device, especially for our kindergarten through 5th grade students who might not have had a device in the home, mainly primary students, as we had 4th and 5th at the end of the year bring theirs home. We are still investigating which MiFis or hotspots will work best in our communities and trying to determine if we want to do the Wi-Fi Rangers again, which were deployed on buses and allowed large groups of people to connect to the internet as opposed to just individual MiFis, which are really based for a household. So that's where we are right now with the technology and internet connectivity.
Thank you so very much. Any questions for Ms. Lofton?
Dr. McLean, it's Tom. There is so much information here, which is so necessary. And I know that this is a hugely important decision that the board makes. When we get through with all the slides, would it be possible, as we discuss this further, to go back through and ask specific questions related to some of the items on each slide? I've got 2 or 3 questions. It won't take long, but I'd rather wait and do that at the same time if that's okay with everybody.
Absolutely. And another thing we can do, if I could, Lauren, when we are done, I know for me it is always helpful if I can see things again. If we could email this to everyone, would that be helpful, board members, as well?
It would for me.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Sounds good. Let's do that. Let's do that as well. Thank you for that, Dr. Houlihan.
Sure.
Very good. All right, Ms. Curtis, will you take it on home for us? It is time to get to the crux of the matter. So that's good background information and some pieces we know you need to know. But now let's get to the looks of the plan. So Ms. Curtis. You might be muted, dear. Ms. Curtis, we see a very strange looking screen.
There we go. All right, sorry.
It's strange, especially looking at Dr. Myrick and Dr. Winborn. Hey, please give us another.
Thank you, Dr. Houlihan.
Sorry about that.
And thank you, Dr. McLean, and the rest of the board. As you requested, we've talked with other district leaders in North Carolina. We've talked with some state education leaders and experts that have been studying reentry across the nation. So we wanted to share with you some of the things we found and then share a couple of plans with you. Yes, Dr. Meyer, that would be fantastic. Thank you. If you would email it to everybody. So we looked at a lot of other districts. Dr. Barrett conducted some research just reaching out to his colleagues, and then we had a couple of other folks that had compiled what some other districts are doing. What I'm showing to you on this slide are things that have been presented to other boards. I'm not listing what districts they are, but we wanted to give you kind of an overview about what has been presented to other boards across the state at this time. So I'm going to run through these because I know there are some folks participating by phone. So District A, they have K3 and 9-12 face-to-face Monday through Wednesday and remote Thursday and Friday. And then grades 4 through 8 are remote Monday through Wednesday and face-to-face Thursday and Friday. District B, they have pre-K through 6 on an A week, B week, and 7 through 12 is full-time remote. District C, K3 Monday through Thursday every week, 4th grade through 12th grade, A week and B week rotations. District D, K8 is face-to-face and 9-12 is full-time remote. District E, we have Monday and Thursday, one group is face-to-face, Tuesday and Wednesday and Friday they're remote. Group B, Tuesday and Friday is face-to-face, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday is remote. So that's very similar to the plan that we shared with you, but just different days. And then we have 4 other districts and charters that have adopted the plan that you preferred the other on Monday night, which is Group A is Monday and Tuesday face-to-face, Wednesday through Friday remote. Group B is Thursday and Friday face-to-face, sorry about that, and Monday through Wednesday are remote. So what did we learn from our research? So that's an overview of some of the things that we saw. Again, I'm only sharing what's been presented to boards. There's a lot of stuff that a lot of boards that haven't seen plans yet, and things are still in the works, so we didn't share that. But what do we see from things that have been presented to boards in other districts regarding Plan B? So 4 other districts, as I said, have an identical alternating day proposal to the proposal that the Granville County Schools Board of Education preferred on Monday. 1 other district's plan is the same proposal as the one you preferred, but uses different days of the week. 2 other districts did not include a remote day. However, in those cases, an entire grade span of their student population is remote full-time. They're doing this in order to utilize space in buildings where remote students would have been in class. When asked, we also learned those districts indicated they have ample staff to cover these additional classrooms. They were very large districts with some different resources than we have. And then some districts are including multiple remote days per week. So we wanted to share kind of some patterns that we saw in our learning. Any questions about either of those slides?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, do I understand, and maybe I just missed it on your previous slide on the District A right there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that, so what they're doing is they're bringing all of their K3 and all of their 9-12 students, the whole group of them, face-to-face Monday through Wednesday, and then in order to get to 50% capacity, they are alternating with grade level. So 4 through 8 stays home while the other grades are at class. Is that right?
That's correct. So they are able to move kids across facilities is what they're doing.
So how does it, if all of 9 to 12, that's all high school,
Mm-hmm.
if they're all together face-to-face, how does that do the 50% rule?
They're spreading them across multiple facilities.
Oh, okay. I got you. I got you. And that looks like a very interesting concept, but I guess it would be difficult for us to implement that.
Again, it's a balance of the resources you have and what's going to work best for your community. I thought it was interesting that K3 and 9-12 had 3 days face-to-face, where 4th through 8th grade only had 2 days face-to-face. So there, some give and take with all the plans, obviously. None of them are as good as being in school all day, every day, but there's give and take with all of them.
All right. Well, that's just something to consider. It's a different concept that I don't know what it. I mean, it would be. I guess so. If we try to do something like that, it would be that we would spread web students across northern Granville Middle School and the web campus, for example. And you do the same thing with Hawley and South Granville, and then I guess Butnerstem Middle and Granville Central. Is that how it would work for the 10-12?
But it's not just about students, Mr. Rivers. It's about having enough staff to cover that.
Sure. No, I understand.
And about administrators, classroom staff. Do they have enough of each particular type of teacher to spread them out across campuses instead of moving those kids or those teachers within the building to work with kids in that building? So it.
No, I understand. I just was trying to see mechanically how it would work. I agree. There's many challenges. It's just a very interesting idea where you get to have, all the kids together. But it's, yeah. I just was curious. Thank you so much.
No problem. Any other questions? That was a great one. All right.
I've got some questions, but once again, I don't want to there's so many different options here. The thing about it is, and we've talked about this, I know where we are on this, but, if we go back, and I would just like to make sure that, I've thought about this, that our guiding principle is that we do best, but we do what we can for the best way to not only serve all kids, but to really make sure the kids who are less fortunate, who are not doing as well, that we don't have to just stick to, one thing or the other. I mean, and I know you all do a great job of this, but here's an example, and I've talked with some of you about this. We know that our third graders are just not collectively reading on the grade level. And I'm just picking this out as one example. We know that. As we move forward, we've already talked about this. If we could give those kids as much time as possible, I don't know if we could, we've already talked about this, but I guess to me that's critically important. We just don't have to do this or that. If we use really what our needs are in terms of what students need, maybe we can get over the hump of this process being lousy. The fact that none of us want to be doing this stuff, but as complicated as it might be, those kids, Mr. Rivers, you talked about how kids do in the ninth grade and stuff like that, different groups. I mean, if that's really an issue, what could we do, if anything, to take this lousy situation and make it more palatable? So I don't know what I'm saying, which is not unusual, but anyway, it just crossed my mind, and I just wanted to put that out there, just not to respond to, but just to let you know maybe some of the things that perhaps we could take a look at.
No, I think it's hard to balance all those needs, because you're right, and Mr. Rivers is right. We have kids that are struggling at every grade level. And so I think one of the things that we talked about prioritizing is trying to see every kid as frequently as we could.
But it's tough. It's tough. It's real tough.
And being able to see them twice a week is better than seeing them every other week, because you can stay abreast of what's going on was one of the things that we thought ought to be a priority. But,
yeah, and let me throw out just something else for it's worth. about how important this is, and that is, I think I told Dr. McLean, over the weekend or late last Friday or whatever, there was a story on WRAL, maybe it was on WRAL.com, where a young lady who was 10 had made some basketball team in the state, and she was gone to some tournament as they go. 10 years old now. She came home, and her entire family got the COVID. She picked this up in a ball game somewhere. And so it's so critical that these young kids, I mean, as much as we hear the young ones are not getting sick and so on and so forth, it's what happens in the family. And that's a classic example of what could be happening. And anyway, how that would tie into this, who knows? But I see some of you smiling at me, so I'll be quiet.
Thank you for sharing. I think that's absolutely fine too. That's what we've seen in our survey data, that our parents and students are absolutely concerned about. So thank you for sharing.
That's
Thank you for listening.
Let's look at the plans that we have for you. So this is the plan that we shared on Monday night with the alternating days. So if you'll recall, Group A comes on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday is remote for all. Thursday and Friday, Group B comes face-to-face. So in addition to allowing time for that intensive cleaning, disinfecting, it also allows time for teachers, because we know this is an increased workload for them working with both face-to-face and remote. It allows time for teachers planning, grading, feedback, virtual sessions with students, working with their colleagues, continuing to develop them, because we know that this is new and different, and we're going to need to continue to improve, so professional development time. And then the opportunity later in the year to perhaps bring in some small groups of students that need some targeted instruction. It's something we're looking at as well on this day called a lab day, and that would be where teachers are looking at small groups that could come in for a short amount of time, so we could do some of that cleaning and disinfecting, but still maybe have a small group in the building to work on some targeted skills. So that's the same one that you guys saw on Monday. We did want to present you with one additional option based on your request. So I'm going to show you one additional option at this time. So this is option 2. This would be 3 days in a row instead of 2. But when you have 3 days in a row, you give in another area. So the remote day is not the same every week. But we want to give the opportunity to think between these two options or provide some feedback. Questions about 3 days in a row before I kind of move forward?
Lauren, would you walk through those, if you don't mind?
Yes, sir. So it would be different each week. So for instance, in A week, Group A would be face-to-face the first 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We'd have a day that's remote for all to allow for, again, the time that the teachers need to plan for both groups and professional development and meet with small groups virtually. Then we'd switch to B group, and they'd have 3 days in a row. So that goes into week 2. So Friday in week 1, and then week 2, Monday, Tuesday, we'd have a remote day again. Then we'd switch back to A for 3 days, have a remote day, switch back to B for 3 days, have a remote day, switch back to A for 3 days, and then that pattern would continue. So then next week, week 5, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday would be Group B face-to-face. So it's just, it gives a little bit longer time for teachers to build momentum, but it also has the trade-off of the remote day not being the same day each week.
Now, what we found with this one is it gives more time, consecutive days with the teacher, but it also gives more time away from the teacher. So that's what Ms. Curtis means with the give and you take a little bit. What we wanted to present you something close to what it seemed you liked the other day, with the consecutiveness of time with teacher, the back-to-back, and then there was some time in between, because this is a heavy lift. It is a heavy lift for teachers planning for both, so we're able to put that in there along with the intensive disinfecting day in between the two groups. Ms.
All right,
Curtis?
a quick question. When you, the A group and the B group, would that be done by, school, by grades? In other words, if you had 3 days of B and those were secondary, you know, that might make a difference in it versus high schools and middle. Anyway, have you thought about what you're thinking there?
So it would be K-12, the students would either be in the A group or the B group.
Okay. Okay. That's tough.
It is. It is.
Ms. Curtis?
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate you all coming up with a different alternative, but I guess I don't like this for a couple of reasons. One, it would be really tough on parents to try to figure this out since it would change every week. But number two, you're right with the give and take. Where, let's say week one, A gets 3 days in a row, which is fantastic. B only gets 1 day of face-to-face. So I think, for me at least, I would say our original plan of 2 on, a remote day and then 2 on, I think is superior to this. But I do appreciate it's imaginative, and I do appreciate you all bringing it to us. But I really don't like the idea of one group only having 1 day of face-to-face.
Yeah, Ms. Curtis, I agree with Mr. Rivers on this one. I appreciate the effort put into this, but this just seems like it's a complex web for parents to have to try to keep track of what week they need, you know, child coverage.
Absolutely.
It's just, this is hard to follow.
Absolutely. There are pros and cons of each of them, but we wanted to make sure you had some options. Other thoughts?
Ms. Curtis is being very gracious right now. We saw some schedules that had 4 days on and 4 days off, and some very creative ones. But I would agree when I put my parent hat on, as we tried to do in some of these instances. We do ask our board to be mindful of that piece, not just face value. That is why you will find in some of what we shared with you, some of what other districts were doing, there were some very strategic things that we have mentioned, and we're happy to go back and take a look at some things. Some of your comments around pockets, I've heard something here for grade spans.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be happy to go back and take a look at. And we made comments the other evening about making certain vulnerable populations and other things were included. We are holding true to that as well. So we want to just be sure to say that. In your comments, we're still taking notes today in case we need to bring you something on the 13th of July. I think I said August, but the meeting is the 13th of July. Let me make that point.
Dr. McLean, what is, of all these, what is the most cost effective?
That is a good question, Dr. Houlihan. Let me have Ms. Curtis share 2 more pieces with you. Okay. And when she shares those 2, because transportation comes into play, I think I'll be able to answer that question for you. Okay. The next 2 slides, thank you. We are also recommending that whichever one of the 2 plans you choose as a board, that we take our time to try to do it right. You heard me mention that in my opening comments. Ms. Curtis, will you share with the board about this staggered entry? We don't know a lot of things right now, board. We just don't know. We don't know who is going to ride the bus. We don't know with this plan B who is truly going to show up. We don't know. We know we've purchased thermometers and we're ready to rock and roll, but my goodness, I don't know if the thermometer is going to necessarily do what it's supposed to do. We're hoping and praying everything works. We don't know that everything will. So we need a moment to help our families make certain we get this thing right and that our students are following protocols and procedures. as well as they possibly can, and that our educators are able to do everything according to plans, because this is just new. This is just different. And it's new and different for everyone across this state, and I'm going to go so far as saying across the nation, frankly. So we're asking for a staggered entry. Now, we put some dates here, but we may need to be a little more fluid than even this. So, Ms. Curtis, walk us through this staggered entry, if you will.
Yes, ma'am. So you guys are probably familiar that we do with the fact that we do a staggered entry for kindergarten every year, where we bring in just a few students each day and teach them about how to be in school. This is so new, we think it's valuable enough that we do this with all students this year. So we are proposing that we have, no matter which option you choose, option 1, option 2, or if we land on some other option in our decision making for Plan B, that whatever we do a staggered entry, and we're proposing that take place over several weeks, August 17th through September 11th. And our goals are to learn and practice, because this is, as Dr. McLean said, very new for everyone. So we want to make sure that our students understand the screening and parents understand the screening and physical entry processes, that our bus routes are correct. We do not want to have children who are on B day out waiting on A day and wondering where they're supposed to be. We want to make sure that physical movement in the buildings is, we're going to have to create one-way hallways. That's a new thing for folks. We're going to really have to think about scheduling things. And we're going to have all these things in place, but we want to make sure we have time for students to learn and practice. We want to make sure that all of our supports are in place for our vulnerable population. We want students, our safety and hygiene procedures to be second nature to our students by the time the staggered entry is over, because we want to keep everybody safe. So the first week and each week after that, everybody would attend one day of face-to-face instruction, and we would do it in smaller groups. We might take the A group and divide it in half, and one part of A group come on Monday, the other part of A group come on Tuesday. Then for the B group, also divided in half. One group come on Thursday, one group come on Friday. That gives us small groups to practice in. But just to emphasize, the first day of school for all students would still be August 17th, and everyone will either log in or report to school on that day. So some of the benefits of a staggered entry, again, we ensure that all students and families understand all of the new processes and procedures, and that they become a part of our new routine. It ensures that everyone understands the service delivery for students in specialized programs, and that all our resources are in the right place to protect our vulnerable populations. It allows us to continue to expand our enrollment for the 20-day head count. And it just most importantly ensures a cost-efficient approach while students or staff are navigating new health, safety, and instructional protocols. We want to be sure that at the beginning, everybody is safe. We know when we're new, that's when we perhaps have, the largest margin of error, and if something happens, then it happens with a smaller group, and it doesn't spread outside that group. We just want to be really cautious. So those are some of the benefits of a staggered entry. That's just an additional thing for you to consider outside of choosing Plan B, but that's our recommendation is doing a staggered entry to help make sure that all of our student parents learn these processes and procedures, and that we can do them in an efficient way before we bring back an even larger group.
Dr. Houlihan, I asked her to mention that because after the staggered entry, we will probably then have to revisit our transportation just a bit. So Dr. Winborn, if you would assist me with now that we've presented the staggered entry, if we were to couple it with either of the plans, which would be the most cost effective? Option 1 or option 2?
Well, thank you, Dr. McLean. I think that there is not going to be a significant difference in the cost of transportation for either of those two options. I think logistically, option 2, as Rivers and Dr. McKnight alluded to, it's going to be more difficult to keep track of. And we need to remember that many of our drivers are dual employees. So, they are needed back in the building. So I think from a financial standpoint, it's probably a wash. When you start looking at some of the other plans, though, that Ms. Curtis showed that other districts are doing, some of those plans would be considerably more expensive, especially if you started the version that Mr. Rivers inquired about, where 9-12 students would need to go onto middle school campuses, because you would be looking at probably some type of additional shuttle service and that sort of thing, where we would be crewing in miles, and the buses would just be on the road longer.
Also, Dr. Winborn, moving elementary kids to a larger building would require some facility changes, which would be very costly.
Oh, absolutely. We'd have to move a lot of furniture. Yeah, good point.
And if I recall some of our preliminary conversations, it would require additional personnel. Mm-hmm. So board members, we've tried to bring you what we thought would be the most reasonable plans for our community. Although we know there are some others out there, but we're more than happy to go back to the drawing board if you would like. I don't know if that helps, Dr. Houlihan, or if that muddies the water.
That's fine. You answer the question as much as you can.
Yes, sir.
I would say also, Dr. Bloom, you guys already eliminated the most expensive option, which is the AM/PM. That would be
yes,
outrageously expensive.
Thank you.
So the next step is that signing up for fall entry for learning. New students to Granville County Schools can continue to enroll using the process on our website, the current process. But in July, all GCPS families will be asked to complete the SAFE, which is the sign up for fall entry, and indicate which learning option is being chosen for their students. So are they going to choose face-to-face, which would be Plan A or Plan B, as we're talking about today? Is it going to be the virtual option at their base school, or is it going to be Granville Academy? So that's kind of what's on the horizon. And then we're going to need a response from everybody, and this is going to be tough. So we're going to need y'all's help in advocating within your communities to make sure that everybody's. And just as a reminder, these are the three options that we're going to present to families: face-to-face, virtual option at their base school, and Granville Academy.
Dr. McLean, I like the fact that we're going to, or we need to make sure that we're advertising these different options. One of the conversations I've heard in our community is people wanting to move to homeschool because they just think that they don't want their children to come back into the building. They think that's the only option. So I think by advertising these options, especially like that virtual option at a base school, would go far to make sure that we continue to keep the ADM we have, that if a family feels that homeschool is what they want to do because they don't want to come back, instead of signing up with a homeschool company, that they use our virtual option. Making sure they have know that they have those choices would be a big deal.
Wonderful. Thank you for mentioning that, Mr. Richardson. Granville Academy has been an incredible option for homeschool families in the community the past 2 years. So I would certainly encourage families who are uncomfortable or just really causing, having anxiety, to really look at a virtual option at their base school. And we've designed it that way so that students and parents would be connected to a school. We don't have a virtual school. One, we can't afford it as a school system to have another school sitting somewhere. But this way, youngsters are part of a family culture. They're connected socially and emotionally to a school. and so are the families of those youngsters. The virtual option will be online at each school. We also have the Granville Academy option, which has been up and running for 2 years. It's our hybrid model. It's blended. It is the one place when this pandemic hit where very little disruption occurred. And we're proud of that. We've been published for it. Others have come to Granville County Public Schools to ask questions about how did you all do that? So I would ask people to give our principal, Bill Graham, a call. If you don't want to take it from me, call the school. Those teachers are ready. They're excited. We have elementary, middle, and high school. Granville Academy, our hybrid model, is doing a fantastic job. And they've done so with many of our families who are already homeschooled. They've come back for Granville Academy. But it is not just for homeschoolers, it's for students who need a hybrid model. It works very, very well, and I'd encourage it. So thank you for mentioning that.
So we wanted to start to educate folks on some of the differences between the options. We're obviously going to provide a lot of educational materials to folks as they're looking to make a decision about what works best for their child or children. But this is just a beginning of some basic differences between our learning options that are available to families in the fall. So again, we've got some people on the phone, so I'm just going to review this verbally really quickly. We've looked at daily schedule. And so face-to-face, obviously, if the governor chooses Plan A, we go to school every day. If the governor chooses Plan B, then we will wait to know what the schedule is based on what your decision is. Granville Academy for K-8 is 2 partial days per week and 3 full days and 2 partial days remote per week, and that's for K-8. 9 through 12th grade is fully remote unless the student is not performing at standard, in which case they have to come in for some support face-to-face. And then the virtual option at the base school would of course be 5 days remote per week. In terms of transportation for face-to-face, that would be provided by the base school for Granville Academy, and the virtual option, that would not be provided. Same for meal service, face-to-face, we would be providing meal service at Granville Academy, and the virtual option, there would not be a meal service option. Internet connectivity for face-to-face, it's not required. We, of course, would love for every student in our community to have internet connectivity, and we're working to provide it in ways that we can and continue to advocate for that with local and state leaders. But it is required for Granville Academy and for the virtual option at base school. The one program here that requires an application is Granville Academy. Academic support provided by the adult for face-to-face is a recommended thing. We would love for our parents to be involved and support our students, even though they're involved in face-to-face learning. It is required for the virtual option and the Granville Academy. In fact, at Granville Academy, we have a contract for the at-home learning coach. And then our paper packets available as an alternative to online learning for remote days. And for face-to-face, that is a yes. Students that don't have internet, but for Granville Academy and the virtual option, all their assignments on remote days would need to be completed online. So that's just, again, just a beginning of some of the differences, but we wanted to start to define these for families and for you, so you would be able to talk with folks about the differences between the options. And we'll continue to provide more information, but we wanted to have a starting point for your thinking and sharing with folks in the community. So I think we're going to allow you guys to ask some questions, and then Mr. Richardson, I think we're going to turn it back over to you and see where you guys are, or you all are in terms of making a decision today, or if more thinking is needed. So any other questions from our board members at this time?
Lauren, will you go back to the first slide?
The very first slide?
Yeah, well, I want you to just very quickly, if you would just, this is so important.
Yes,
if
sir.
you would just run through each of the slides, not in great time. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, you got it, no problem. You just stop me if there's something you want to ask about. How about that?
Great. Or anybody else.
Or anybody else, that's fine. Yes, sir. So this was the clarification about the occupancy, our update on current cases.
Mm-hmm.
athletics.
Go back to the athletic thing if you would. I'm just curious, do you all see this as a problem in terms of how to carry it out and all that good stuff?
Dr. Limborn, or Dr. McLean, you want to speak a little bit about that? I've not been involved in these discussions as much, so
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Dr. Houlihan. I believe districts are waiting to just refine some of the protocols a little bit more, Dr. Houlihan. The accountability is so great here this time that we need just a little more comfort. And I believe you probably saw Durham on the news. They've extended their date. Several other districts who've not necessarily published yet, so I'm certainly not going to call names. We just all agree that the level of comfort is not there yet, so we need just a little more time to continue refining what we're working with.
Okay.
That is where that is.
Good. Okay.
all right. So Plan B, again, our focus is on Plan B today. And then Dr. Winborn gave us some updates on the cleaning protocols that are required by DHHS and DPI.
Keep going.
Okay. I guess. But yeah, technology and internet connectivity. So there's some updates.
Yeah, this is one.
Okay.
You know, are we able to we're gonna have, I mean, there's probably nothing we can do, but I worry so much about the kids who need the technology, who don't have support at home and all that. I know there's nothing we can do about it, but this seems to me the one real hole in everything. And I don't know if there's anything else y'all can do, but boy, this is just, maybe nobody else, this is just a mess. And I don't mean because we're making it a mess, it's just a mess. We just got to make sure that every child has this kind of support in technology. It's just frustrating.
Yes. And there's a part of it that we can control, and that's the device part. And you guys were so great on Monday to approve those purchases to ensure that every kid's going to have a device. But there's a part that's out of our control, and that's that connectivity piece. And I think we've just got to continue to advocate with the appropriate folks that this is something that's essential for every household, just like electricity and water.
Okay, and that's my editorialize, and it's just to me the one hole in everything, but there's not a lot we can do.
So then we went into the different plans. So this is how it looks in other districts. So did anybody have any questions about any of these plans? Any other clarifications I could give? Any questions about the highlights from the other districts? All right. Any questions about option 1? This is the one you saw on Monday. Option 2.
Is there any issue with any of these giving us enough days or hours to meet state requirements, or is that going to be waived possibly?
I think we've really got to move our thinking, and this is different from how we've thought before, from hours and seat time and face-to-face time to thinking about student mastery of material, student learning, and that's really where this is going to force us to and they've been very clear to state that it's not time for time kind of thing when we're talking about remote versus face-to-face. I don't know if anyone else wants to add.
If I could,
Attorney Peterson?
yes, I just wanted to note that under the Senate Bill 113 that was passed, it states that remote instruction can be used to meet the calendar instructional hour requirement. So when students are receiving remote instruction, that is counted as a school day under your calendar requirements.
Great question. Any other questions? So then we got to the staggered entry. Questions about that? Those were our benefits. Any questions about the sign up? And then again, families will be selecting the 3 options. Any questions about the differences between the 3 options that we've presented today? All right, well, Mr. Richardson, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you then at this time, unless you have something else to add, Dr. McLean.
I would just like to thank you, Ms. Curtis, for being our district lead on this work. I know it has been interesting work for the past 6 to 7 weeks. I would like to thank all of our district staff and employees who contributed to this work. Several of you are on the line this morning and several are listening in. Thank you. Thank you for the contributions you've made to this work. And to our board members, for my goodness, this is not an easy decision. And I was so hoping, like many of you, we would have had some additional information this morning, but despite that, I hope you find this information helpful. This concludes the presentation this morning. Mr. Chair, we turn it over to you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you so much. Just want to make one notation. Ms. Loftus, Dr. McKnight has left the meeting. He left about 10:05 because he had a previous engagement. So I just want to note that. So now we're here with 4 board members. All right, board, so you've heard the presentation. A lot of that included the updates that you asked for from our last meeting on Monday. Again, to clarify a little bit of what our purpose will be right now, this is a time for us to kind of deliberate between the 2 options for Plan B, kind of back and forth conversation, as well as asking for any additional information you want. Again, this is down for an action item today. However, based on the fact that the governor did not make his announcement, we feel comfortable with moving in the option for us to kind of get a consensus of the board to direct the staff, and then us come back the 13th to make a final decision, hopefully having more information then. So that's kind of a prerogative of the board there on what direction they would like to go. So what I'd like to kind of open this up, I want to kind of keep this so we don't belabor the point, but essentially since our staff is actually supposed to be off today. And so what I want to do is let's focus on Plan 1 first. Lauren, if you can put that back up. Plan B, Option 1 is the one that you saw Monday. That is 2 days of face-to-face, 3 days of remote learning for both groups A and B. Let's talk just a few moments. Let's take 3-4 minutes to talk about the pros and cons of this, or more additional information that you need. So board, what do you think about this option currently?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Beast.
Of course, I heard a lot this morning, but what I want to say is, I don't think on the 13th we're gonna know a whole lot more than we know today. And looking at the numbers and It looks like North Carolina is moving in the wrong direction. So I would just like to ask the administration, Dr. McLean and her team, I like, of course, I like option B, the one that we do 2 days on. But, whatever we decide as a board, they have to carry it out. And I think at this point, they might have some ideas about where to start and what would work best as it relates to the staff and students and their learning, be it remote or face-to-face. So, maybe I am putting somebody on the spot, but that's okay for me anyway. But I would like to know what they would think about this and how well they can carry it out as it relates to student learning.
Yes, sir. Dr. McLean, do you want to speak to that? Do you and your team have a recommendation between these plans?
Between the two plans, Mr. Chair, our team has spoken extensively. What we presented tonight, and after looking at multiple plans, option one is the plan we feel most comfortable in executing. Of course, I go back to a statement I made earlier this morning, which was fully knowing that at some point things may change and we might be able to do a little more, but we might have to do a little less. So once we get through the staggered entry period, option one would be what this team, if it were our choice, option one would be the recommendation of our team.
Okay, thank you for that. So board, you've heard that the staff is recommending this option. What other comments do you have regarding this option?
Mr. Richardson, I'd like to make a motion on this to get it on the floor, get it so that if we want to vote for it, we can. But I think it's important to get something down in terms of action. I don't think waiting till July 13th is necessary. I think staff needs the time to get to work on this.
Okay,
So
do you want to
make
a
I
motion?
would like to make a motion that the board approve adoption B1, subject to any additional information or requirements from the state of North Carolina.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
I'd like to second, but can we add the motion to include the staggered entry?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, I second it.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor made by Mr. Houlihan, seconded by Dr. Houlihan, seconded by Mr. Rivers, that the board approved Plan B, option one, that you see on your screen now, subject to any changes implemented by the state, and also including the staff's staggered entry plan that they have presented to us today as well. Got a motion and a second. What other discussion do you have?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Howard.
I was trying to comment earlier, and for some reason I was on mute. The option two, to me, goes against everything that the parents said that they wanted in their survey. So I fully support option one, just because the parents had said they wanted a consistent schedule. So to me, this is the obvious choice.
Yes, ma'am. I would take a moment to concur with you and the other two board members as well. I remember a time of being in high school having A and B days, and there were some weeks that it would be B days during 3 days a week and that. And I think you're correct that it's going to get very confusing for people. It's not going to give the parents what they feel that they need. So I believe that this consistent plan with option one would be our best choice, and it sounds like we're getting that from the staff. Any other comments before we vote? All right, so hearing none, if you're ready to vote now, we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Allard,
100% yes.
Mr. Rivers,
Yes?
Mr. Peace,
Yes.
Dr. Houlihan.
Yes.
All right, so that is a 5-0 vote, unanimous vote. And so, staff, you have heard that. If you will go and start making more plans around option one, and as you have needs or need more information from us, please don't hesitate that we will come back together and work on that, especially we'll hear an update on that for July 13th. Dr. McLean, any further comments on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, board members. We really, really appreciate you doing this. We will wait to hear where our state goes. We will have this plan ready to go. It will certainly allow us to go through next steps and get our principals and schools ready. Thank you so very much.
Yes, ma'am. All right, board, at the beginning of our meeting, I told you that we would need to go into a closed session for just a few moments for attorney-client privilege. And so, Ms. Dubison, are you prepared to tell us what general statute that falls under?
My apologies, I was muted.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we just wanted to go into closed session to discuss a couple of matters of attorney-client privilege that are related to the agenda items today. And so if there could be a motion under General Statute 143-318.11 for the board to consult with the board's attorney, and then we'll return to open.
Okay, board members, you have heard the recommendation of our attorney for a motion for closed session based on those general statutes. Do I have someone willing to make that motion?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Dr. Houlihan. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second by Mr. Rivers. We will do a roll call vote to go into closed session. Ms. Allred?
Yes.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes?
Mr. Peace?
Yes.
Dr. Houlihan?
Yes.
All right, we will now go into closed session. All right, members, we are back in open session. We now have our next subject of 2.03, discussion of filling the vacant seat, which is District 3. If you remember correctly, Monday evening, Mr. Rob Rivers tendered his resignation. At that time, effective September 30th. You tasked me with putting together a timeline and a process based on the fact of what we have done in the past. And so we took a stab at that. And so kind of what we're going to present to you is kind of what that timeline could look like. If you remember, we kind of did this off of Ms. Allred's seating. And with that, we did add a caveat that we did last time, is that this process will continue until we find the appropriate board member or person to take that seat. So Dr. Winborn is putting that up for us to see right now. Basically, this is the same process we've used, is that we'll continue with 6 members until a replacement for District 3 is appointed, and that's per our policy 2115. Mr. Rivers made his resignation effective September 30th. It's our intent to identify a suitable candidate. And so we have given, in the press release that we will send out, we've given what the duties of a board member are. We're asking that candidates submit a letter of interest with the resume and 3 letters of recommendation to our clerk, Ms. Henderson, by July 17th. These documents will then be compiled and sent to you as a board. And then at the August meeting, the August board meeting, that first board meeting, we will review those documents in open session, and we will decide who to vote for to issue invitations that you wish to interview. And then we will schedule those interviews. We are looking at possibly, if we have candidates suitable, possibly a date mid-August to be able to interview those candidates. We will use the same list of questions for each candidate like we did last time. All of this will be in open session. If you find it suitable at that point, then we would vote to fill the unexpired, well, so at that point, based on guidance, if you are ready to choose a candidate, you feel like you have a pool to choose from, at that point, once that is vacant, either at September 30th or another date chosen by Mr. Rivers to vacate that seat, then we would hold a meeting to vote to appoint someone to that seat. And then we would ask that candidate to take the oath of office at the next scheduled regular board meeting. So those are kind of some of the dates that we had put together based on kind of how we did it the last time. So what we will do at this point is we'll have some discussion about that. And then at that point, if you choose, we will take action to make this the process and to formally accept Mr. Rivers' resignation. So board members, what are your thoughts concerning this process that we've used?
As I said before, I think we make a big mistake if we move too quickly on this, and I would not support this. I think we need to look at a date, from my perspective, beginning in mid-September, with the goal of having somebody seated by the 1st of November board meeting. And I don't really know what the process will be for Mr. Rivers being involved in this. I'm not sure, but anyway, I just think it should be pushed back, and I don't think, we've got, well, you've heard me say enough.
Okay. Other board members, do you have comments? All right, so based on your comment, Dr. Hulan, do you want to revise this anyway? Do you want to leave this and see what we get, knowing the possibility of it could go longer? What is your suggestion here?
My suggestion is that, as I said, that we wait. The thing that I think that when we talk about this, the thing that we really want to avoid, if we can, is, doing interviews and we don't have many good candidates and we say no to that and move on. I mean, if we could, if giving more time might lessen that issue, I think it's another reason to support it. I'm not sure that makes sense, but anyway.
Okay. What if we did this? What if we accepted resumes through the end of August? We would determine a pool of candidates to begin the September board meeting. We would interview in the middle of September, and then that person take office in October because his resignation is official September 30th. That would keep with what his wishes were. It would put us in line to have somebody in place. My only concern about waiting until mid-November, which I guess, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, the board still functions with 6 members. I just think, like, my personal thought is I feel like we spend a lot of time on adult issues of running a board and managing us versus the time we should be spending dealing with children issues and dealing with what should move the district forward. And I don't disagree what you're saying is I want to make sure we have the best pool of candidates, but I also just don't want us to drag this out forever because it takes so much attention and effort with our staff trying to support our work, with board members spending time dealing with this versus spending time on the things that we're supposed to spend time on. And that's just my opinion.
Well, Mr. Richardson, you know, that's all well and good. But number one, we do not need to even consider what Mr. Rivers wants. He's going off the board, and I don't think that's on the table from my perspective. Second, if we, and this is the number one issue, if we move on this over the summer, and we have a list of candidates that we're going to deal with the 1st of September or whatever, the real question is, are we going to even get, I mean, how are people that are going to be off on not vacation, but whatever, I mean, I just don't think that time frame and that part of the time of the year is going to give us the kind of candidates that I think we'd like to have. I may be totally wrong, but I just don't think that's gonna work.
Okay. Mr. Peace, were you trying to say something?
Yes, sir. The only thing I see that's the problem with the original thing that you talked about was the deadline. Now, I think the deadline for accepting applications should be moved forward to at least 1st or sometime in September. And once that's done, we can arrange for interviews. If the deadline for accepting applications is 1st September, during the month of September, of course, candidates could be interviewed and we can make a decision at the October meeting.
Okay. So basically at this point, Miss Aura, do you have anything you want to add?
I do. While I really hope that Mr. Rivers will reconsider, I agree with Mr. Richardson that the faster that we move on this, getting somebody in place to me is very important. And the fact that in the summer that people might not know about it, Dr. Houlihan, everybody already does know about it. It's all over social media that Mr. Rivers has tendered his resignation, and there's already all kinds of talk out there. So I think the sooner we could get somebody in place, pending the fact that Mr. Rivers does go through with this and does not change his mind, I think the sooner we get somebody in place, the better.
Okay.
Mr. Carroll, based on the information we have now, we can't get nobody in place until October.
Yes, sir.
Well, we can start the ball rolling.
So if it would help, I think, so in order to address the issue of the vacancy, one thing you could do is leave it open to receive applications until beginning of September. Choose interviewees at your September meeting, do the interviews in September, and then just understand that you won't vote until your October meeting.
Can we vote at that October meeting and seat the person in October in the same meeting?
Well, if you know who you're gonna.
Yeah, well, yeah. that could be complicated. Sorry, I didn't think about that.
Let's not go down that road.
Yeah. But so you can vote in your October meeting. The person won't be seated until the following meeting.
And am I correct? Is it just tradition, or does it have to be at the regular board meeting they take the oath?
It does not have to be at a regular board meeting.
Okay. Because if that's the case, then we're pushing it back to November again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so at this point, it almost sounds kind of like we're half and half, which is a bad situation to be in right now. But the good thing is there's only 3 of y'all that have to vote right this second. So I guess at this point we can do one of two things. We can I mean, we can let this rest until July 13th when all of us are back together again. Or we can pick this process, use kind of what Eva just said, which kind of spans it out until the last day Mr. Rivers is with us. And I guess the third option is to go with what I originally brought you of this is the order we go with to have a person ready to go by the end of September, beginning of September. And just knowing that if we don't find proper candidates, then we keep looking. So at this point, what is the pleasure of the board?
Is there a motion on the floor?
Well, no, sir. Basically, we have the recommendation I brought you and now two other recommendations.
Oh, Tom's was the recommendation.
Well, that's kind of was his thought, I guess. I don't know if he actually.
No, well, we'll agree with that. Sir?
No, I was gonna say, it wasn't something that I kind of was reacting to what, the lousy thing that, Mr. Richardson brought. I was reacting, I didn't make a motion.
I'm just saying I use the former chairperson's process.
But you didn't use the time frame.
Okay, so let's focus. I want to go home, people.
Well, I would like to make a motion, sir.
Yes, sir.
The motion is that we take applications through the month of August until the 1st of September, rather. And during the September, we review and interview candidates.
Okay, so I want to make sure I have some dates correct for Dr. Winborn. Are you saying taking applications through August 31st, and then we would go through those applications as a board September 7th for interviews? Am I following with you right now?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, the 8th, because we would not have a meeting the 7th. That's Labor Day. And then,
Okay.
and then during our work session on the 21st, we would have interviews on the 21st. Mr. Rivers' resignation would be effective the 30th. And are you saying, would we possibly vote the 21st and have the person take office October 5th? Having him up his resignation by week, or no?
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, then tell me what you're saying.
The board would make a decision on who the person would be on October, whatever day the regular board meeting is.
October 5th, okay.
And at that time, you could decide whether to wait until November and have them seated or have them seated at a quorum meeting.
Okay, I got you. I'm sorry about that. All right, so let me go through it one more time. Is applications through the 31st of August. We would issue invitations for interviews on September 8th. We would interview on September 21st. We would vote on October 5th.
On the first one, yeah.
Okay, and then we would decide when we would seat the candidate.
That's correct.
Okay, so let me have a second for that motion. Yes, ma'am.
Is it necessary to put specific dates? I just suspect that there's going to be a lot of flexibility needed by the board in the next 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Is it possible to either indicate that the dates are targets, or that you would review and interview candidates in September with the aim of filling the seat at the first meeting in October? Just because I just don't know that I just feel like your meeting dates may
change. Yeah.
We're not filling the seat in October. We're deciding who's going to take it.
Correct, correct.
I think what she's saying is the specific date for interviews, that we leave that kind of flexible because that may change based on what's going on in the state.
Good idea.
Okay.
Not a problem, not a problem.
These are just targets, okay.
I'll change my motion to reflect that.
Okay. Do we have someone to second that motion? And I'm sorry, I needed to ask you to add one more thing, Mr. Peace. We have determined we think we need to officially accept Mr. Rivers' resignation. We feel like we have done that before with the others. And so would you mind amending your motion to reflect that we're officially accepting Mr. Rivers' resignation?
Sure.
Okay, Ms. Allred, are you okay with that change?
Yeah.
Well, my hope is that he will reconsider, so no, I will not second that.
Okay. Can we word it that, that we would officially accept his resignation upon confirmation of his resignation?
I mean, you can. I'm not sure that that really has a lot of effect. I guess the idea was just that the motion would be that we accept the resignation and we'll follow the following procedure to fill the seat. So
What if we went with Mr. Peace's original motion, Mr. Rivers has time to talk to me, and then July 13th, we bring another motion. If he indeed wants to move forward, then we accept it then.
sure.
Okay, is that
Did the board
okay
not
with me?
accept this resignation the other day when we had a meeting?
Well, we didn't
pronounced
vote to accept it.
And it's
All
a
right.
symbolic step. I mean, it's not, it's okay that you didn't do it because he's announced it and put it in the minutes, but we just thought it would help to clarify, to offer some clarity since he's sort of given us this much notice that we accept it for the purposes of going ahead with this process, but it's not required.
So why don't we go with Mr. Peace's original motion, Ms. Allred, if you're okay with seconding that, and then I will conversate with Mr. Rivers over the next couple of weeks, and we will make sure that this process is needed or not needed by the 13th. Does that sound fair to everyone?
It works for me.
Okay, all right. So that's our motion by Mr. Peace, second by by Ms. Allred.
Mr. Richardson, could that motion be read again, please?
Yes, we're actually going to look at what Dr. Winborn has on the screen as well. And so if I'm correct, Mr. Peace, correct me as I go along, that we are accepting the process in which we will accept letters of interest, resumes, and recommendations to the clerk by close of business August 31st. And that during our September 8th meeting, during our September board meeting, the board will review documents submitted by the candidates and vote to issue invitations to the board, those that the board wishes to interview. And then during the month of September, during the month of September, we'll hold a special called meeting for the purpose of interviewing candidates. And then during the regular scheduled October 5th meeting, we will vote on who will fill the unexpired term. And at a date to be determined, the chosen candidate will take office. And again, if there are no suitable candidates selected, we will continue the above process as necessary with new dates. Does that concur your motion, Mr. Peace?
You did good.
Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion? All right. If you're ready to vote, Ms. Allred?
Yes.
Mr. Peace?
Yes.
Dr. Houlihan?
No.
Okay. And so that is a 3-1 vote, the motion passes. All right. So that will become our process at this moment that will be released to the public. Again, if I will conversate with Mr. Rivers and we will bring you an update at the September 13th meeting. I do want to bring some dates to your attention. I said September 13th, I meant July 13th, I'm sorry. We have a special called board meeting July 13th at 1 p.m. That will be virtual. That will be for the purpose of hearing an update on reentry, taking action if necessary. It will also be to discuss the budget as you tabled the motions on how you wanted to use fund balance at our last meeting. And now I will give you an update on Mr. Rivers' resignation at that meeting. August 3rd, we have a regular scheduled board meeting at 6 p.m. If we are live and in person, then we will do the superintendent's evaluation. If not, we will be virtual. And then we have a master board training scheduled August 24th from 3 to 6 p.m. That's scheduled in the chapel basement of the Masonic Home. You remember, we as a board decided we would take a master board training. So that's what that's for. There will also be a forthcoming date about a retreat that we had talked about a couple meetings ago. At that point, Madam Superintendent, do you have anything further?
No, sir.
All right, board members, do you have anything further? All right, on behalf of the board, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to thank the staff for participating in this. Again, we know that you sacrificed your day off morning, so I appreciate that. Definitely want everyone to enjoy their 4th of July holiday. And as we think towards how we will re-enter schools, please continue to keep our children and our staff at the forefront of your thoughts. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I do. I'll make a motion. Get out of here.
All right. So I believe we have a motion by Dr. Houlihan, a reluctant second by Mr. Peace. If there's any other discussion, we'll take a vote. Ms. Allred?
Yes.
Mr. Peace? Dr. Houlihan?
Yes.
No.
All right, well, you stay right here and the rest of us are going to go. You know, he's been awfully cantankerous today.
You broke my heart on that motion.
I know. All right. Well, again, everybody, thank you so much.
By the next meeting.
Say that again.
I say I hope Tom's hard heals by the next meeting.
I'll try to, but I'm not sure.
Me too. All right. Well, everyone have a great 4th of July. Thank you so much and appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Happy 4th of July, everyone.